Howdy, folks. Hey, Big Wolf. Let's see, I guess I was going to get started. I don't see Troy here. I think he said he had some other stuff come up, so I don't think he's going to be at this one. I don't have a lot of new bento topics on this end, but I'll run through what there is. We're still running the same RC build, the RC2, so if anybody has feedback on that, I'll be glad to hear about that. We've got a couple of things that will be coming in the next build. One, we'd had some discussion about the scale locking feature. It sounds like there's enough interest in it in its current form that we'll probably go ahead and put that out. It's just an optional checkbox that you can use when you're doing mesh uploads. So if you check the checkbox, you get the new behavior. If you don't check the checkbox, you get what you've had before. So it's not really forced on anybody. But that'll be coming in the next build, maybe next week sometime. Also, some performance optimizations. We got some feedback about performance issue, which I think is related to increasing the number of joints. Turned out there was one particular kind of hot spot that it's probably worth the exercise of speeding up. So that may help the frame rate for some people if you're in especially if you're in a rigged mesh heavy region. So interested to hear how that works for everybody. I think that's basically it for bento topics. The only other thing I was going to toss out, just not because it's really bento related, but just because it might be of interest to the folks here. We're starting to do some investigation into rendering cost calculations. There have been, and land impact, there have been some JIRAs filed suggesting that various content isn't getting assessed accurately for that kind of thing. Some of that may be things that we can't fix for for legacy reasons, but some of it may just be things where we need to revise the formula. So if you know of any problematic content or any relevant JIRAs, please pass those along, and we'll take a look at it. Let's see. I guess that's basically it for our kind of canned topics. Let me see if anyone has any new questions or comments. We can basically throw it open for discussion. Hi, I like the merfolk thing. Is that also bento, using the bento joints? All right, anybody doing anything new and different with Bento? I see we've got big wolves, and they know how to ride motorcycles, so that's cool. Saw some discussion of wings in the forum, too. Seems like a wolf would rather ride in a car so it could stick its head out the window. I don't know. All right, well, I guess we may have a short meeting. New bugs, new projects. Our slider's supposed to be locked. You mean in terms of whether we're making any more changes to them? Or in terms of whether the scale locking is supported? The sliders do... If you can play with shapes as a joint position, yeah. If you have joint positions defined, then those positions will be respected when you're using sliders. All right. So if you have a slider that's trying to change the position of a given joint, but there's a position defined in the mesh, then that will override the slider. So those particular joints won't move. They should be well, they're not completely disabled because you can still change scales, right? So some sliders affect scale, some affect position, some affect both. So, for example, if you change the scale of an ancestor of a given joint, then that also affects where that joint appears, even though you haven't technically changed its position. But yeah, it shouldn't actually change the position of any joint that you have a position defined for. So if something isn't working right there, do let us know. Animation's limited to specific bones. Good question. I don't know if we have any documentation that helps clarify that. One of the things we were trying to do with Bento was to allow for make it easier to mix and match. So, for example, a mesh isn't required to define joint positions for all the joints anymore. And it's always been possible to have an animation that only affected some of the joints. So it should be easier now to to have a mesh that just affects the state of your your arm or your wings or whatever, and make it easier to mix and match. I'm not sure how well that's covered in the current documentation, though. If there's kind of particular holes in what's covered, we'd be interested in suggestions for that. Yeah, that would be helpful to know which joints are being used, so you can figure out whether two things will work well together or whether they'll kind of stomp on each other. Icon for mixable animations, where? You mean the icons that you would show inside the inventory browser? Oh, for Marketplace. Yeah, I don't know. Marketplace is kind of outside my wheelhouse. I don't know anything about how they manage that, but I can ask around. I'll make a note of that. I think the tricky thing is that there's not, it's not so much that it's mixable or not mixable. It's mixable with what? If you're only affecting the wing bones, then you should get along with anybody who's only using the leg bones. But if you're using some more complicated subset of the bones, then it may be hard to tell. Well, animations have a priority, so that if the priorities are different, then one will win over the other. If two animations have the same priority, then I think it's kind of undetermined. It's whichever one shows up first or second or something. Yeah, I don't think there's any definite answer unless you use different priority numbers in the animations themselves. I've seen some discussion of that. There's been some proposals to try to make the ordering of animations more deterministic when they're the same priority. But that's a non-Bento thing. I'm not sure what the state of the discussion is right now. Yeah, the priority is set on upload.
I heard that it is possible to set different priorities per bone, and supposedly it does work. I just haven't actually tried it yet.
I'm not sure how that would work. I thought the priority was just a property of the animation, but I may be misremembering that.
From what I remember, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Kathy. I think we're going to say the same thing.
Okay. From what I remember, Matrice told me that when you export out of Blender and you're creating a .anim file, that you can set the bones priorities, previous to exporting it as a .anim file. It doesn't work with BBH, but it works with .anim files, and Maya does not have that capability yet, so this is only a Blender thing. Right, but with BBH, you're setting the priority for the whole animation at once, in the upload window. But the .anim, supposedly, from what Matrice, if I'm remembering correctly, you can set a priority for each individual bone before you export out.
Well, that's interesting. I'd have to check the format on that. See if there's a per joint field.
And just to let people know that when you export .anim in Blender, all of those normal settings that you would have upon on a BVH upload for Second Life are already inside of Blender Avastar. So you set those there and just export the file, and it contains everything it needs. And you can batch upload or bulk upload NM files. I did set up a test per bone, but I haven't had enough time. Other things have happened, so I've gotten away from testing it. But Matrice said it works. So.
All right, well, I'll take a look at that, and we can revisit it next meeting. The difference between anim and BVH is a little weird. What happens is if you're uploading a BVH, that's an existing format that was around before Second Life, and if you upload a BVH, we do some processing on it to try to make it more efficient and so forth. That may make that could make the animation a little bit smaller at the cost of slightly tweaking some of the values. If you upload an anim, you're basically bypassing all of that, so you don't get any efficiency changes or any changes to the specifics of exactly how the animation works. But the anim isn't really a recognized file format. It's really just internal to SL. And it's basically just what you used to get if you go into the BVH uploader, specify a bunch of options, and then all of the processed BVH contents plus the options all get baked into that one anim file. And so that's kind of what the format is just our own internal representation of exactly what's going to get uploaded for an animation. So depending on how smart your tool is, it may or may not know all the different things that could be put into that file.
Right. Maya users, you should know, Maya users, there is a .anim native to Maya, but it's not the same format as the .anim file for Second Life. So if you see that and you're new to Maya and you see that you can export out a .anim file, it's not the same as the Second Life .anim file, so it won't upload. Just so you know.
Unfortunately, the whole thing is a little confusing. Yeah, I'm not sure if I take all the blame on that one. The history is a little complicated and includes an open source contribution. But anyway, let's see. Could you enable disable joint positions checkbox in world? Not really, because there's once the object has been uploaded and sent out to everybody, the content is kind of fixed. So if we couldn't specify it as something that you could edit after the fact unless we made it an attribute that could actually be sent to other people and so forth too. So yeah, it would be possible in principle, but it would be a fairly substantial change from what we have now. So Tornleaf, what's the specific application you're thinking of here? Are you thinking about like tweaking the behavior of individual joints in a mesh like after it's been uploaded? Yeah, totally. If it should be possible to have multiple meshes with joint positions defined today, as long as they're not trying to define positions for the same joints. So if you had, a centaur that was positioning the front and rear legs, and a human torso that was positioning the arms and chest, they shouldn't be able to coexist peacefully. But if you have two meshes that are trying to tweak the position of the same joint in different ways, then it's going to be kind of unpredictable what would happen then. Yeah, what I would hope is that once things are out in the marketplace, we'll see some kind of standards being established where people are trying to make things in a way that interoperates, and we'll develop some conventions on how to describe these things to help with that. But yeah, right now we don't really have any specific standards for how stuff gets listed in the marketplace or anything. Is there a ballpark date range you expect Bento to be implemented in the main viewer? Not really. As I've said other times, I'm hoping soon. The main thing we're waiting for is just time against the RC candidate. We want to make sure that there's not nasty bugs lurking out there before we can go to release, and you need a certain amount of user hours to accumulate that information. So far it looks good. We really haven't had any new bugs filed since we went to RC about Bento, at least not that I've seen. So, I think that's encouraging. The other question is that there might be a little bit of a bump up in the crash rate, and so we need to do a little bit of investigation into that to see if there's a fixable issue there. Yeah, honestly, you're never absolutely sure, but you'd like to be at least comfortably sure. But the signs currently are pretty good, so I'm hoping it won't be a whole lot longer before we're able to go live. As I've also mentioned before, it also depends on the timing of other RCs. So even if everything's ready to go, you don't really know when you're going to get the green light until it happens, because some other set of viewer changes could get prioritized. just obviously anything about dates is speculative. I would say that if we don't run into any major new issues, with Bento, and there isn't some crisis that requires other things to be pushed out ahead, I would expect the time frame to be on the order of a few weeks rather than, it's not like it's going to be 6 months or anything like that. But again, we don't really know until it comes out. Yeah, no, we definitely want to get it out as soon as we can. I know a lot of people have been waiting for a long time, and there's a lot of cool content coming in the pipeline as soon as they have the chance to release their stuff.
Can Firestorm release before Second Wind and Lamp?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what the policy is there. I know we don't. We asked the third-party viewer people not to incorporate changes before stuff comes out in RC. But once it is out in RC, yeah, I'm not sure exactly how that works. So certainly, it would be risky to do that since until it's in release, we don't know for sure that there's not going to be some change. I would say it's unlikely at this point, though. We certainly don't have anything on the radar now that would require a change to joints or sliders. But if that did happen, then it would be bad for anybody who was trying to accommodate that was incompatible. But anyway, I hope we can get it out soon. We're not sitting on it just to be sitting on it, and I'm looking forward to seeing it out and release.
Well, regardless, I think my wolves are going up probably today or tomorrow. So.
All right. Well, any viewers that aren't wolf compatible are going to be in big trouble.
They don't look pretty, that's for sure.
All right. Well, any other topics for this week? We can head off and do other things if you want. Nice. All right, well, we'll keep you posted. There's not a meeting next week because we've got our usual conflicting company meeting, and so we'll see you here in 2 weeks. And in the meantime, we'll keep you posted on anything new and different. right. Well, bye, all. Thanks for coming.
Oh, thanks, Peter.
Right. Yeah. Scale Rock is going into the next Bento RC. I don't know the date on that, but it's probably sometime next week.
Oh, again, I'll mention if anybody wants a large wolf, I'm giving it out to anybody for free at the meeting today. And please play with the shape if you have one.
Oh, I'm there. I totally need a large wolf.
Okay.
Oh, thanks.
Oh, just out of let's see, I logged off. I was logged on with the regular Bento viewer, or and I was getting about 18 frames per second, and I just relogged on with the Firestorm beta viewer for Bento, and I'm getting about 24 frames per second, so not too bad, up to 30. Just if anybody was curious, 64-bit version.
Yeah, I think I mentioned we do have some optimizations coming, so you may see a bit of a change in your frame rate in the next RC. I'd be curious to see how that shakes out.
Now I'm getting 24.6 frames per second, while on the Bento viewer I was getting between 16 and 18. And I would love a giant wolf, maybe. That'd be awesome. Thank you.
All right. Well, see you in a couple of weeks then.
Thanks. Bye, dear.
Bye.
Thanks, dear. I guess now we'll start the Bento after hours.
And to anybody who got a wolf, I really want to see the different shapes that everybody's going to make themselves. So I think it'd be interesting to see different shaped wolves.
Oh, bye, Aki. Let's see. Well, I wanted to make an announcement to the MayaStar users. Is that, yeah, I'm coming along. I got all the sliders working with all the new bones, although there's definitely there's some bones that are not working properly, and I have to redo all the animations. So it's coming along. So MayaStar hopefully will be updated in the next couple of weeks. But it's, as usual, you run into things that you weren't expecting. I wasn't expecting to have to redo all the animations because they were just using rotations. But it looks like I'm going to have to figure out how to fix all the basic animations for walking and sitting and stuff like that. And some of the bones are not behaving the way they're supposed to when I move the sliders, but they are at least all working. And I did want to let people know that Aura Linden, Maya users, that Aura Linden is working on an exporter for .anim files for Maya that will be open source. So even if you don't have MayaStar, you should be able to get eventually get an exporter for .anim files for Second Life once Aura is done making it. Oh, she's doing it on her own time. She's not getting paid by Linden Lab to make it, so it's sort of when she can get around to it. I think she's got one alpha version ready, and I just haven't really had a lot of time to test it yet.
fascinating.
It is kind of fun to be something this large.
We're hoping, Latrice and I been talking with Veer about maybe a possible follow-up project to Bento, which is maybe adding a slider to change the overall size of your avatar, scale bigger or larger, so that the whole avatar gets bigger or larger, just not taller or shorter. And it should be fairly easy to do, and because we can only add maybe 2 or 3 more sliders before it's physically becomes impossible to add more sliders in the program. The program, there's a limitation. And so, but Vera really likes that. The only thing we'd have to, making the avatar bigger or smaller is actually quite easy. The code for that is actually very, very easy. Same as the same format as making the head bigger or smaller. Although we'd have to determine exactly how big and how small do we really want to go. The hard part.
Kathy, though, there is an easier way to do it, though, and the easier way to do it is just give a scale. If we just had scale in our animation, we could make the avatar any size we wanted.
Right. That's what it would be. The scale would be.
I was kind of thinking about that the other day. Why don't we just have scale? I don't understand why.
That's what this slider would be. Would be a scale slider to make your whole avatar bigger or smaller. But since we only have maybe 2 or 3 places to be able to add sliders left, we couldn't do it per bone. We would have to do it for the whole entire avatar. So we would have to figure out exactly how big do we want people to be able to make their avatars. 64 meters tall and 0.1 of a centimeter tall, somewhere in between there. Then the only other thing we'd have to fix would be how far each step, when you move, I've made a tiny avatar before that was really small, but since the individual steps, it would make the little avatar look like it was going Mach 5 when it was just walking. It was because it was taking the same, each step was doing the same distance as an avatar when it was normal size. So we'd have to figure out how to change that so that it would respond to the size that you had your avatar. But it would be awesome if it would simply how far you walked or how fast you walked, distance-wise per step or per second of flight, if that would be able to scale up and scale down when you move the slider, so that if, say, you have a piece of land and you have 115 prims, you could make your house really small, and that would cut down on the land impact. And so when you go home, you become tiny, and you go into your dollhouse, basically, but it looks the same. But it looks the same size as it would be. You just scale down, and that would cut down lag too, because it's not going to be drawn as far a distance. So it actually would help lag and everything.
But like I was saying, why not just give a scale in animation?
Oh, scale in animation.
If I have scale in animation, I can do all that stuff all on my own.
I see what you.
I could even make a custom character that everybody could customize every bone scale and have any size arms, any size head. I mean, as long as I have scale, I can do all of it.
Right. I think the key would be if we had scale in animation, would it override the sliders that were using scale, or would it be an additive or subtractive thing?
You probably wouldn't be using that anymore. You would just have your own system now.
It'd be nice if it simply added scale or subtracted scale. That way the sliders would continue to work even if you had a custom animation that used scale. But I know Veer said that as far as adding scale to animation, they'd have to overhaul the whole animation program, program in order to add scale. Might be a bit bigger, too large of a project.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how much work it would take, but I was just thinking about it the other day. It's like, why don't we just have scale? We can do whatever we want then, you know.
Right. Before Bento before Bento opened up, and it was no longer in secret, before the NDA was lifted, we did talk about adding scale to animations, and Veer said, yeah, they could do it. It would just be it would just take a lot of reprogramming, and he wasn't sure if Linden Lab, the bean counters, would allot that much money to overhaul the system. Would be nice though. That would be awesome. I would like would be to animate the sliders. Making a file that actually animates the slider values. Like breast physics and butt physics are actually just animating the slider values, but they're being calculated inside the avatar LAD. So yeah, butt physics, your butt's bouncing up and down and your breasts bouncing up and down, are actually just animated sliders, really. Because with animating the sliders, you can make facial expressions, you can blink the eyes, you can morph the face, so it could morph. Or if we had scale to be able to scale the avatar bigger or smaller, you could scale the avatar bigger or smaller that way, with basically kind of an animation, but Veer said that he doesn't know any way to actually have a file be able to upload to do that. Interesting. Right. Yeah, you could increase the muscle, the size of the muscles, just slightly to make it look like when somebody's flexing. Yeah. I don't know if it would tax or not, because they're sending that information anyway when you change your appearance in the appearance editor. Oh yeah, one could go from Mr. Hyde to Dr. Jekyll in a transformation. Well, yeah, exactly. Really, if you had not only these sliders animating, but if you animated your texture, you know. Or if, by either animating the texture or doing an alpha that fades from one to, two. Yeah, that'd be awesome. I'm doing an experiment. I found this out a couple of years ago, that when you go into your appearance editor, you can turn off that animation so that you don't actually, because you know how you make changes to your face and nobody else can see, or your avatar, nobody can see your shape until you're done changing. I think if you turn off that transition, people can actually see you change. I'm going to try to do that. Have the animation turned off so you don't go into that spin. Oh, okay, so they can't see it until you change your shape. So you don't see me if I move the slider tall height, you don't see me getting taller and shorter? Oh shoot, I was hoping that you could. Okay, you're right, you're absolutely right. Yeah, you don't see it until you hit save.
I have some Whirly. I made them for the Linden Lab avatar that I made. And they will just, I'll have to reposition them, but it should be really simple. I'll make some just for you.